Oh, wait, no, we're not talking Psycho.
That's the wrong movie.
Sorry, wrong Hitchcock movie, damn. Oh, welcome back to the wonderful world of Cinema Discovery Project. I know that didn't sound like that flowed right, but
no,
we're
it
back.
did not.
Yeah,
it wasn't as smooth as we had planned.
I didn't plan it. I didn't
plan it either.
I never plan anything.
I know, but we are once again back on another brand new episode of Cinema Discovery Project. We are going on another spotlight. Well, going into another spotlight, I should say. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew Cabral, and my co-host is as always, Stephen Billings.
I am Stephen Billings.
Yep, we are in mid-April. I don't even know time anymore.
We went so far.
Crazy.
We went into the machine so hard we traveled into the future.
I know. We're going to be bringing that back right now. The way back machine is back in business, and for this spotlight, we're going to be going back to the 1940s, specifically 1943, with an Alfred Hitchcock film, which
our
is
first one.
Shadow of a Doubt, which is our first one. Yeah. Yes, it has been. We've always talked about it. I think we've always talked about doing an Alfred Hitchcock film at some point, but Alfred Hitchcock, who is one of my favorites of all time, is probably one of the most talked about filmmakers ever.
I think he's definitely, when you're talking about filmmakers that are internationally well known, you got your Spielbergs, you got your, Alfred Hitchcocks, you have your, I would say Martin
Scorsese's pretty wide.
Scorsese, Tarantino is probably, I would say, up there.
Christopher Nolan at this point.
I think Christopher Nolan's made his way up that way, where he's internationally known. His movies have reached that far and wide that they've become their own entities, and they can sell their movies just based off of them.
But when we're talking about kind of legacy directors, like mainstream legacy directors, Alfred Hitchcock, I think, is one of the largest, because he's someone I knew about long before I watched any of his movies, before I even knew who he was or what his movies were about. I just knew the name Alfred Hitchcock because I just heard people talking about him. And what is interesting is when I was a kid, my first introduction to Alfred Hitchcock was Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Yeah. Because they showed it on like Nick at Night and stuff, and back in the 90s, and that's kind of how I would watch it. I think it was Alfred Hitchcock Presents, or it was like the revived version they brought back in like the 80s, Alfred Hitchcock Hour or something like that. But either way, that silhouette of Alfred Hitchcock is exactly is the image I've always associated with him, and it's iconic.
Yes, that bird-like face, which very much falls into his own movie, The Birds. But, yeah. But Hitchcock is, some people don't even realize this, and I'm not trying to downplay people's knowledge of Hitchcock, but some people don't all really realize that he is a British director. He's not American.
No, he's not.
He a lot of his most popular films were made once he became more an American director. Started working in America more, but he had a whole career before he did which Rebecca was his first American film. Right,
but his career spanned from the 1920s in the silent era all the way up to the mid/late 1970s. So we're talking 5 decades worth of movies, and he did. I think he did 57 movies. Maybe I'm a little off on that.
You should know. You're the expert.
I should probably know on that. But
I think it's 57. I think I remember.
Yeah, I'm going to look that up. But
Shadow of a Doubt was I think maybe his 3rd or 4th movie into making movies in America.
Yeah, because basically up until the late 1930s, he was making films in Great Britain, and a lot of those films are fantastic. They're 39 Steps.
Oh, Lady Vanishes.
Lady Vanishes. You have the original The Man Who Knew Too Much. Yeah. That was part of the 1930s. But you had other films like Blackmail, Sabotage, Murder with exclamation point.
I Confess.
Murder. I Confess. No, I Confess was after.
Was that after?
Yeah, because that was starring Montgomery Clift.
Okay.
As a priest. And that was after. But and then you had like Jamaica Inn, I think was like his last movie he did in like 1939 before he came over to Hollywood. Hollywood lured him over. And lured him over, and his first film was Rebecca.
Yeah.
The thing is though, he started out doing movies set in Great Britain, but he was making them for Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah.
like Rebecca is a European film, Suspicion European film. Saboteur, I believe, is actually an American film, but it's a film that's kind of not propaganda, but it was made as a message to, like this idea of like underground Nazi groups in foreign countries. So therefore, you have to get into the war and stuff like that. But
propaganda.
You also had like Foreign Correspondent is another one where like literally the end of that movie, without spoiling anything, is imploring people who aren't involved in World War II to get involved in World War II. But what makes Shadow of a Doubt so unique is it's so quintessentially Hitchcock. Like, it feels so much more like Hitchcock than I think some of the earlier films he had done in the 40s.
Yeah.
Because this was a real, we're going to get into it, but it's hitting on a lot of Hitchcockisms. Specifically this idea of just like, evil lurking in the background of places that are unexpected. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like in Psycho, you wouldn't expect murder to be happening at a motel or something like that, especially in the way in which it was depicted.
Yeah, I think with this movie also, it gets us closer to. He's hitting on ideas that are a lot closer to what he would be doing later. Especially once he gets to Psycho, where it gets Psycho was him swinging a really large stick on that movie. He's trying to do things to really shock the audience. Having nudity and very at the time gory scenes, though in black and white. This movie Shadow of Doubt.
There was a hint at nudity in Psycho. But he cut it in a way which there was no nudity because you had to get by the Hays Code.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Frenzy where he really, it's an R-rated movie.
Yeah.
That movie has like rape and murder, strangulation in it. But back, 30 years beforehand, you couldn't really depict those things in any graphic form. You had to hint at them, but you still had to make them scary enough, and he did.
He found ways to be very risque by putting, I think, which is, stuff that, guys like Spielberg learned from him. Sometimes not seeing something is more titillating than seeing them, so, you'll be in the scenario, but then you'll only get that person in the shadows, or you'll just hear something that's off screen,
right.
and he uses that a lot.
He was first of all, I was wrong about 57 movies. It's 53 movies.
Oh
so
God,
I was close.
You screwed that. You gotta go back and start this over again.
Yeah, you gotta edit that out.
We're gonna trump this. Okay. Fake news. Fake news.
But what he was a master at doing is putting the idea in people's minds and having them come up with the conclusion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's nothing you could really put on screen that would be more frightening than what is made up in someone's mind.
Yeah.
I really like that idea.
Oh yeah.
We're
dealing with it right now with the coronavirus.
Yeah, very true.
People are blowing. The media shows us things that makes it worse in our minds.
It does, and it also kind of lets the audience be participatory with in the films. You know what I mean? It's not just them sitting back and just, eating popcorn or whatever and just taking it all in we see in a lot of movies today.
It makes you have to pay attention, which is something I think movies need to be trying to do more of, is not spoon-feeding information to the audience, but making you engage, and stay engaged.
Yes, and stay engaged. But Shadow of a Doubt is a film that we chose because it's not one of his more well-known films. It's well-known amongst Hitchcock aficionados and cinephiles and stuff like that, but it's not Psycho, it's not North by Northwest, it's not Vertigo, it's not Rear Window.
Yeah. Sticking with our theme, what we try to do with this podcast, we try to discover. For me, this was my first time seeing it. I did see it. I watched it a second time before the podcast, but we are always trying to help you discover things and not just go for the obvious choices. We could have done a Psycho or we could have done a Rear Window, which is what most people see. But
which is what a lot of those films are discussed ad nauseum in every film school or course on the planet, to a certain extent. I know I took a film course on Alfred Hitchcock, and there was a whole book we had to read about the making of Psycho and stuff like that. Those films are my favorites of all of this stuff. But I find it so fascinating to go back to his early work, his 1930s and 1940s work, and just see what he was doing before he became like super well known, before he had his really well known films. And his 40s filmography is fascinating to me because it's so eclectic. And I think from 1940 all the way up to I would say 1960, I'll go 1964 with Marnie. I think he had a hell of a run of films.
Yeah.
A hell of a run. After that, you have Torn Curtain, Topaz, Frenzy, and Family Plot. Those films vary depending on who you talk to. And for everyone who knows me, I'm a big Paul Newman's my favorite actor of all time, and I don't think Torn Curtain's that great of a film.
Yeah.
And he was in it. But going back to Shadow of a Doubt, it came out in 1943, I believe.
Yes.
And stars Joseph Cotton, Teresa Wright, Henry Travers, Hume Cronin is in the film. He's an actor I've seen come up a few times in other films. Like he was in Lifeboat, another Hitchcock film from a few years later. He was kind of like a career character actor, but he had a very interesting, like, kind of witty role in this film. But yeah, so you just want to get right into it? I do want to also mention that this was apparently Alfred Hitchcock's favorite film of his films, his personal favorite film, which is fascinating to me.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder. I guess we'll find out going through it. So the film starts off. First of all, the score in the film is really well done by Dmitri Tiomkin, who was an early collaborator with Hitchcock, I want to say, before Bernard Herrmann took over and kind of
I was gonna say this, and maybe I'm just crazy. I didn't love the score in this movie.
It's one of those. I was.
It's very standard.
I knew you weren't gonna like it
because it goes between the whimsical like moments, and then it suddenly goes into some over dramatic thing.
Yeah, I was saying it's very much one of those scores that
feels like it's cut and paste.
Yeah, it dictates tone, which is an old school way of using scores. I mean, it's still done now, but even today, ominous music leads to something bad happening.
I just think that there's certain moments
things are happening.
Yeah, there's certain moments where I think it overdoes it. Like there's a scene where she runs up to get this ring out of his room when she's not supposed to be in there, and then it's like the music is super dramatic, and I'm like, you're not even moving the camera into the room. You're like, it's like no, the camera ain't even moving. You're getting super dramatic for no reason.
That is very true.
It gets a little bit overcooked, I think, sometimes.
If you look at Dmitri Tiomkin's filmography, he has 127 composer credits.
That's a good amount.
And he was in all. Yeah, he did I Confess. He did Dial M for Murder. That's just the Hitchcock stuff. Strangers on a Train. Original music.
To be honest with you, I'm not saying he's not a good composer. This particular movie, I wasn't that impressed with the score personally. So
no, I'm just reading off to give people context. Like he also did like It's a Wonderful Life and Red River. Bunch of films.
A lot of good stuff. A lot of good films he did.
Yeah, a lot of amazing films. But yeah, so I just wanted to point that out because the score is, like Steven said, it's pretty involved throughout the film. So the film opens up and we get a series of kind of like
we start off with
the
dancing, the people dancing on screen.
With the opening credits, with the waltz.
Yeah.
Which connects later on in the movie. I couldn't quite make that connection throughout it, but I think it has to do with the murder and whatnot.
I think it has to do with maybe a little bit with like how he sees people. Maybe like he sees people as all happy and he's not happy. Like it's like all people doing the same thing. Like people are doing he sees people as like this and he has a darkness, and he sees everybody else pretending to be happy, and it's like a cyclical thing, and that's what the waltz is this circle, doing this repeated circle thing. I don't know. It could be taken maybe a couple different ways, but I just looked at it as that kind of being through his eyes a more cynical view.
I'm not going to say that you're wrong.
I mean, I might be wrong, but
there's a connective tissue in it between him and his niece, Charlie. Yeah. Where for some reason she also hears the waltz in her head. She also hears the music in her head. It's interesting.
There's a dance between the two.
Which literally. But it opens up with a series of, I would say, master shots and then dissolves. I don't know if you noticed, there's so many dissolves in this movie.
A lot of dissolves.
Hitchcock loved his dissolves. And so we open up with Joseph Cotten lying in bed, and there's money strewn on the floor.
Yes.
And which of course is
he's
not typically where you put money.
He's smoking a pipe.
Yeah, he's relaxing, and then the landlady comes in and says, these two guys are looking for you, one older, one younger, and he starts asking, and she says, oh yeah, I told them you weren't in, and he's and then he's kind of relaxed about it, almost too relaxed.
I would say he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say relaxed. I think he's just it sounds like he's super depressed. He just doesn't care about what's going on. And then she comes over and it's you shouldn't just leave your money laying around.
Yeah, I know.
There's not more honest. I'm the only honest person here. Not everybody's honest.
Very true. I mean, and we also know that the two people that are, that came to see him are kind of staking out the place.
Yeah.
They're sitting out there on the corner, and he sees them out the window.
Yeah.
And he decides to leave. And, I mean, I would say this, Stephen, it's a gutsy move on his part to
walk by him.
Right by them.
He says before he leaves, he says, I think I could be wrong, he says something like, you don't have anything on me. You can't,
oh yeah, they've got nothing on.
Yeah, so he has all he has all the confidence to just walk by them. Yeah,
he has all the confidence in the world. He's a very confident individual throughout this entire movie.
Yeah,
overly confident, one could say.
I do love the shots that of in this scene where he walks away from him, and it has these very wide shots.
Yes,
and you see.
You talk about that overhead shot.
Yeah, the overhead shot, and you see him walk down, and he stops in the corner, and then he looks back, and he walks away, and then the two other guys are following him, and they go the same path, and then they eventually lose him, and he's up on a building.
Yeah, and it's really cool. The camera kind of pans back, and you see him standing over them. Very
ominous, kind of
Not only that, but just interesting visual language. We were just talking about how confident he is.
Yeah.
He's literally lording himself over them. You couldn't catch me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You tried and you couldn't catch me. And he decides to skip town. He's leaving town. He's going from what we understand, east to west. They never really say where he started from, but we know that he's going to Santa Rosa, California.
Yeah.
He sends a telegram to his sister's family, telling them
is it the Newton family?
I think Charlie Newton.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Charlie Newton's his niece.
Yes.
And
Charlie.
Yeah, little Charlie. And he sends a very loving telegram.
I want to stop here. I love telegrams back in the day because you have to say stop. I'm coming over. Stop. I'm coming over. Stop. Please make sure you have the food ready. Stop. And I want to be able to. We should get back to that because that's just fun to do. Yeah,
it really is. I mean, I think people still send them today, maybe, but
Western
not.
Union.
I doubt it.
Nah, they don't. They don't send telegrams anymore.
People barely use telephones.
We have email for
anymore.
That. Yeah, we have email and video calling, and
people still send faxes. I guess faxes kind of replace telegrams.
Yeah.
But he sends a telegram to say that he's coming to town, and this is where we pan over to Santa Rosa, California, and to where we see the family that he's going to go stay with, and we once again get a series of master shots, kind of wide, almost stock shots of suburbia, white picket fences and trees and nice middle class society. And then when we see his family, we first get a shot, I think, of Charlie lying in her bed, and then we get another shot of the younger sister, the younger daughter character, who's lying in the living room reading a book, and she gets the phone call from the telegram office, I guess, that the uncle is coming, and she could not care at all.
Let me tell you this. The youngest in the family, right. This girl, to me, she very much seems like she's the second coming of Joseph Cotton's character. Because later on we hear it. There's a conversation where she, the sister, the mother, talks about how he was very quiet and always read. I'm like, that's what her daughter does.
Yeah,
she's going to be the next killer. It's hereditary.
Her name is Anne.
Yeah. She's always smart.
She's very advanced for her age.
Yeah.
She's constantly reading books. She obviously knows a lot about things.
She decided she didn't want to remember the message because she couldn't write it down. So she said it wasn't worth her putting it in her mind. She only keeps things in her mind that she needs that are important. Right. So she's very goal oriented. That's good. It's good for an 8-year-old.
She was very young, reading clearly advanced. She was reading Ivanhoe. What's interesting, her dad walks in, and that was right after that, right? Her dad walks in, and he's reading what was it, like mystery books or something, like something that's for for children.
Him and the other guy, what's his name?
The Hume Cronin, his name was Herbie. That was his character's name. But
Hume Cronin. All they do with the whole movie is talk about how the best way to kill somebody. Yeah.
No, each other, which is kind of makes it even more macabre. Which is kind of fascinating to me. That's actually one of the dark humor of the entire film. Yeah. The underlining dark humor is their conversations. I think it's also humorous, but it's also, I think, kind of it wants to talk about how people have become desensitized to things, desensitized to things like that, or how they just they think about it like in like
they think about it, but they've never really experienced it.
No, so they don't even it's so outlandish to them they don't even think it really exists.
It becomes like just pop culture. It's just like pop culture for them.
Because they're reading it in like these detective stories, and you know what I mean. They're not really they're reading in fictionalized detective stories. They're not it's not nonfiction stuff. It's very interesting how it gives you looking at it from a modern perspective. It gives us an inside look at the naivete of perhaps that part of that culture at that time. This was long before you had any sense of serial killers or mass murderers. Before we talked about in our last episode, how the Charles Manson cult and how that changed everything in terms of bringing horrific trauma into people's personal lives and all that kind of stuff. It's long before any of that. I mean, at this point, there are world wars happening. And of course, this was coming out of the Great Depression, but we weren't seeing violence like we would see decades later, like we see now. I mean, now you couldn't imagine someone from back then coming into today's society. They'd be horrified.
Oh yeah,
horrified. But the father walks in, and they just have a nice getting back to the story, they have a nice back and forth where she kind of craps on her parents throughout a few times in this movie. The little girl Anne, she's just basically that stuff's for children. That stuff will rot your brain and all that kind of stuff. She's kind of like the adult, and her parents are almost like children to a certain extent.
Yeah,
very interesting kind of role reversal there. So he goes upstairs and then he talks to Charlie, and Charlie's having an existential crisis.
Well, she's very much in the same position as we saw. Charlie at the beginning in his bed.
Lying in bed, thinking about things, presumably.
She's trying to, I guess, figure out, what the meaning, what is the meaning of my existence? Like you said, an existential, kind of thing. And, she can't figure out what to do, but to try to, I guess, find the most interesting person to talk to, and that's her Uncle Charlie.
Right.
So she decides she wants to message him.
Yes.
But she doesn't realize that he's already messaged her. Or messaged the family. So
yeah, the mother character comes home and she's on her way out. She says, "You know what? I'm gonna go send a telegram." The mother says, "Who are you gonna send a telegram to? You don't know anyone." And she's like, "Oh, uncle, someone who's gonna." I mean, she's kind of. Poor girl didn't know what she was getting herself into, but she was like, someone who can shake up, the rut in our family or whatever, and that would be Uncle Charlie.
That's the ironicness.
Yeah, that's the irony of it all. That he shook things up for sure. So she's gone away, and then the younger daughter says like that. No, I think the husband says like that. Oh, Aunt said there was a telegram, but she didn't write it down, and all that. So the mother calls the telegram office asking what the telegram was, and she's like, "Oh yeah, Charlie, my baby brother. He's the spoiled one in the family. Very interesting."
I tell you what, she kind of reminds me of the weird mom from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, Ray Finkle's mom.
Oh man, that's a reference.
But like 30, 40 years earlier. Right. She has this weird like daftness to her.
Kind of a naivete.
And it's like naivete and just continuous. Just she's always happy.
Yeah, she's always happy, but she's rather peculiar in a lot of ways. But what is also interesting with her is right before then, Charlie was saying like how she kind of hates the way her mother lives. Yeah. Like this idea of like coming home, cooking, cleaning, sleep, and that's what she does.
That her life doesn't have any kind of real purpose.
Value or purpose to it. And this was years before the women's rights movement in the 60s and 70s and women and things like that, women's equality and things like that, where we're even talking pre-1950s. We're talking the pre-Leave It to Beaver era of what the quote-unquote American family looked like.
Yeah.
But we're seeing those kind of traditional roles within this film as well. It's a mother, father, and a boy and a girl, 2 kids, which would be like the standard of what an American family would be post World War II.
Yeah.
We're just seeing it pre World War II. So if anything, Hitchcock's a little ahead of his time when it comes to cultural.
Yeah, this is
normalcy.
him commenting on America lifestyle because he's not an American.
True, very true. He probably purposely chose middle class America.
Yeah.
Suburb America at this point. I mean, I know the concept of the suburbs, I guess, wouldn't really be defined until post-World War II, but still, this is kind of what it would look like precursor-wise. So, like you were saying...
Like we were saying earlier, that, Charlie's point of view, he looks at the world as this dump of a place, and, to somebody like Hitchcock, who is, British and is a lot closer to the war than Americans are at that time... he in a sense you could say he's using his point of view through Charlie. Trying to say, hey, Americans, you have it a lot better than a lot of the rest of the world does, and you're a little naive.
I wouldn't even say. I think he's pointing out that. I mean, this is something I was going to bring up later. Might as well bring up now, but I think with the Charlie character, he's pointing out that there is evil lurking amongst all the good that you see. And you have to be aware of it because it will come in the most unlikely places, including your own relative, literally in this case. But it's kind of interesting how that factors into the idealized look that the mother character has towards her brother, where just hearing that he's coming brings her such joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mother's character, I keep calling her the mother. Her name is Emma. Emma Newton. But they actually never really... Charlie's the only one that really refers to her by name, coincidentally. So, but moving on. So the younger Charlie goes down to the telegram office or whatever. I'm assuming the post office. And, since she wants to send a telegram, but the woman there tells her that that her uncle's coming, that they've already gotten a telegram, and she's ecstatic about it, not only because her uncle's coming, but because she thinks that there's some type of telepathic connection between the two.
Yeah, I tell you what, this girl is fucking crazy. She
Wow.
she's got some kind of like, I mean, at least at the beginning of this movie, she has this crazy
notion
that they're like, it's kind of honestly kind of weird how open she is with her uncle about their connection. Like it seems it starts out honestly a little inappropriate on her side. I think she's a little bit overly sharing and a little bit too.
To be honest, I mean, what you're saying is not entirely inaccurate in terms of like Hitchcock playing to those notions. Yeah, because he played with them before. Later on, he played with them. There is I was going to say unholy, but you could say unholy. The weird connection between Norman Bates and his mother. Yeah, that's kind of that's a weird thing.
The only thing I think you obviously there's context of the time period. Right. People don't act the same way as they did back in that time, but I think the thing you have to remember is that she's younger than she looks. She's supposed to be playing younger, and I think they're like we said, she's naive, she's innocent. So yes. She's acting very innocently. Well,
I'm assuming that they were playing up her innocence specifically because then her click to reality, her come to reality would be that much more devastating.
Yeah.
So, like you were saying, Stephen, she's a little obsessed with her uncle. a little bit obsessed.
Yeah, she talks to the telegram lady and says, straight up, do you believe in telepathy? Like, hey, I think me and my uncle, we can, read each other's minds. We know each other that well. It's really creepy.
It's very pre-Stephen King in terms of connecting people supernatural-like.
Yeah, she has The Shining.
Yeah, she has The Shining. Yeah, she has The Shining. Like 30 years before the book was made. But yeah, so the telegram lady's like, yeah, I just send mine the old-fashioned way. Go away.
Oh wait, I just figured out a connection. The character in the new Dr. Sleep movie, this is the origin story of the Rebecca Ferguson character.
Oh, nice. Rose the Hat?
Yeah. This is her origin.
Could be.
Never knew Shadow of the Doubt was the precursor to The Shining.
Yeah, so then let's see, let's move on to the uncle arrives by train, but before he arrives by train, we see like what's going on with him on the train, which I thought was a very odd scene to me. He's kind of hidden away. I'm guessing pretending that he's sick.
Yeah, he's pretending to be sick so that he can keep his profile low while he's on the train. He's trying not to be seen by people. He doesn't want people to potentially take his photograph or anything. He just
or
wants
even
to be
recognize him at all.
Yeah, he's trying to stay, low profile the whole trip down.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Hitchcock is not. He's not hiding the fact that this guy is a bad guy or a guilty guy. No. He's telling us he's always had this penchant for telling us as an audience what people in the movie don't know yet or will come to find out. You know what I mean? And he does it in this film. Like we already know that this is a shady guy.
Yeah,
this guy is not
a story can be told many different points of view. Of course, you can either decide to hide from the audience and go through one person's perspective, or you can open it up to the bad guy's perspective. There's many different ways you can tell a story, and he's chosen, I think, to let the audience in on everything. Yeah, in this movie,
because it's that much. Because Stephen, he's the master of suspense for a reason. Oh yeah. Because if we know what's going on and the people in the movie don't know what's going on, we're like, oh man, what? Like, oh, I can't. Like, you almost want to yell at the screen and tell these people, that's the guy, that's the killer, he's the one doing it, and stuff like that, and it makes you
sometimes it's better
involved.
If the audience knows before the other characters know, it makes you want to interact with it more.
It does. Yeah. So he arrives, and what is it actually? I want to stay on the train for a second, because there's this woman who's like, my husband's a doctor. He could help if you.
I'm on my vacation, woman.
And the guy's like, I'm on vacation,
bitch.
But across from him is the famous, Alfred Hitchcock cameo. He's there playing cards, and that's Alfred Hitchcock, and he's got a hand of like every single card in the deck.
Son of a bitch, cheating.
all the way up to the Ace of Spades, which is, I guess, a significant card. So yeah, he's working. He that's his cameo. He had a lot of fun cameos in a lot of his films in many different ways. I think throughout most of them, maybe not all of them, but for most of them. So that's the little Hitchcock cameo in there. So Charlie arrives, and is greeted by, of course, his niece. And he comes off the train looking derelict as heck, trying to keep up the act. And of course, when he sees them, he's like, he starts walking faster. He takes his coat off. He swings it over his head. He's like, "Oh, hi!" It's like,
and if you notice, he is the only one that gets off the train.
He is the only one who gets off the train. I mean, they pointed this out in the making of a documentary that's on the Blu-ray. Is like, this idea of like evil coming to town on like black smoke, because the train was like was blowing out black smoke. And
he was smoking the pipe, and
he's always smoking throughout this whole movie. I guess this idea of smoke being bad,
the shadow of a doubt.
Shadow of a doubt. Coincidentally, I also read that apparently Shadow of a Doubt was just a placeholder name for the movie, and but it ended up sticking. So who knows? It ended up working.
I would have called it Charlie's Coming to Town.
I know, like Murder in a Small Town. I don't know. That's a terrible title. But he comes in and the family greets him, and everything's all hunky dory. So they go back to the home. He sees his sister and he's like, "Is that you, Emma? From Minnesota?" And like they hug and embrace. Oh, everybody's having a grand old time. Oh, it's so lovely.
I got presents for you.
And then he goes in. He's like, he's gonna. What's interesting? Charlie. The Uncle Charlie's going to stay in Charlie's room, which I thought was very interesting kind of mash up there. I mean, because, that whole connection that they have in quotes. Yeah. So he comes in and he said, and they're all, I guess, acquainting itself with one another. And and at dinner, I believe, is when he shows the presents off for everyone.
Yeah.
There's a couple of dinner scenes in this movie.
But there's that one.
Go on.
A little bit, but there's one great moment where he's going into Charlie's room, he's putting his stuff down, and and the father, he was about to put his hat on the bed, and he says, that's a bad omen. You don't put your hat on the bed like that, And then he's like, that's superstition stuff, blah blah blah. The father leaves, and then he throws his hat on the bed because he's like, the bad voodoo's here.
He doesn't give it, but I would also say that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Man's confident as heck.
He doesn't give a shit.
Bad mojo, bad luck. Pff, I'm better than bad luck. I'm beyond.
He is the bad luck. What are you talking about?
He's so confident he is the bad luck. So bad luck can't get him if he's already the bad luck.
Yeah.
But he just throws it on there, and then we get the scene change to the dinner.
Yeah.
And I want to say, is there a scene before this with the Hume Crone character and the father talking about death, or no?
I think it starts during. It might. I can't.
Because I know during the second dinner scene is when he comes in and he's like.
He awkwardly comes into the dinner and like.
He's like, "Oh man, you guys.
I already ate, but I'll sit down.
You guys
here.
Are eating so late. How fancy of you.
Look, I got mushrooms. I could kill you with them."
Yeah, that was the second dinner scene. But there's one where where they're talking about like hypodermic needles, like how like he was reading a novel with a French detective. I don't even know. It could have been Sherlock Holmes. No, not Sherlock Holmes. Hercule Poirot, probably not. I'm not sure yet. But like someone got killed like a hypodermic needle, like an air bubble. And then the father's like, "Oh, that's too fancy. It would be like a blunt instrument."
Yeah,
that's what a good old fashioned blunt instrument.
They're sitting out on the porch talking about it.
Yeah. I don't think that happened.
I think it's after dinner. I
think you're right.
But at dinner he gives out gifts. And like the girl, Anne gets like a stupid stuffed animal, which she doesn't give a shit about.
Yep.
Yeah, it all started because Charlie said she loved the dress. Charlie says she loves little Charlie's dress, and she's like, "Well, you gave it to me." He's like, "Oh, did I? Yeah."
Yeah. He didn't remember. He probably Well, that kind of comes into context later on, I think.
Yeah.
When you find out really how he's been getting all of his money and stuff to send to people. But he gives his sister he gives her like a mink, not a mink coat, but something like that, like a shawl or something. But he also gives her like pictures of the parents and stuff, which they all make like remarks over. Like the younger boy Roger goes, "Oh, 1889, wow," like stuff like that. But most importantly is he gives Charlie an emerald ring. And this emerald ring becomes kind of significant throughout the rest of the movie for a couple of different reasons. And that plays off like right away in like the next no, not even the next scene, because the next scene is the newspaper scene.
Yes.
Right? The after dinner he's reading the newspaper and he sees something in the newspaper he doesn't want people to see. So Charlie's like, you know what, I'm gonna make like a paper house.
Well, he tries to. He needed a way to get rid of the particular article. So he decides to hide his destroying of the paper in him playing a fun game with Anne, showing her how to build a little paper house.
And those kids, don't
she
care.
Didn't care. She's sitting there, kind of like looking off in the distance, like this is so meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the younger boy walks in, Roger, and he's like, That's Papa's paper.
That's Papa's paper. He's gonna be mad.
And then Charlie walks in, going, "What are you guys doing to Papa's paper?" And it's like,
let me say that other than maybe Anne, the rest of the family is useless in this movie. There is no character development. No, they're not interesting. No. The brother is the worst. He's just like there.
He's just kind of there. They're there for comic relief,
I guess.
They're there for comic relief, and I think they're there, like I said, to show the naivete. Because, I mean, spoiler alert. I know we always spoil everything in these episodes, anyways. They never find out about their uncle, uncle. They never find out the truth. Only Charlie and the detectives know. So, but after dinner, they have the paper thing. He tears off this specific piece that he doesn't want them to see, crumples it up, and puts it in his pocket. And then afterwards he goes upstairs, and Charlie goes to see him. She closes the door. Yet again, Stephen, playing into your whole creepy vibe. And then she's like, "Oh, I love the ring that you gave me. Oh, look, it's inscribed." And it's like, inscribed? And he's like, and then he says like, "Oh, well, I can get it inscribed for you if you want to." He's like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh no, there's something on here already." And it's like TS to someone else. TS, like initials on it. And he's like, "Oh," he tries to play it off sly, like, "Oh, the jeweler, the person who sold it to me.
Over.
He screwed me over, man. He gave me the shaft. You know what I mean? Screwed me over." And she's like, "Oh no," and he's like, "Oh, I'll take it.
It makes her think that somebody else loved it at one point.
Yeah.
There's a sentimentalness to it now.
Well, the thing is, he wants to take it back because he wants to have that stuff scrubbed out.
He doesn't want the evidence, the possible evidence.
Yeah, I think like his confidence kind of screwed him over in that. And then she sees the crumpled up newspaper in his coat pocket, and she's like, she tries to play with him because yet again naivete kicking in. She's like, "Oh, I know you have a secret and whatnot," and of course he's starting to like get nervous. And she grabs the newspaper and he grabs her hand and he starts to hurt her. And I think right then and there is the initial kind of like sparking act where things aren't what they appear to be with her uncle.
Yeah.
Because even though he plays it off in that moment, I think that's the initial thing that kind of sets her off on the track of truth, if you will.
Yeah, she gets her first real glimpse at him in that moment, and then he plays it off like he was just messing around, and then he's like, "Oh, this was something embarrassing with a friend that I wanted to keep out of."
Yeah, it's like a friend of mine. Yeah, a friend of mine is in the paper, and I didn't want you to see it or something like that, and he decided, but also I believe at dinner was when he also told the father character that he was going to go deposit money in his bank.
Yeah.
Right? Because I guess the father works at the bank and whatnot. And the next day, he gets breakfast in bed from his sister. Yet again, plays in that whole, like, he is the spoiled younger brother thing. Which he obviously is. And then that's the day when they're going to go to the bank. And
before that she tells her brother that
she tells him about the survey.
Yeah,
right?
the people, there's these people coming that want to interview the family and about, I guess, just as like a study about modern families, in America and
it's
average
like a government
families.
Thing. Yeah, it's a government survey,
like a census thing or something.
about like the normal American family.
Yeah.
In quotes, I guess.
And of course, he does not want anything to do with it because he thinks this is just a plot to get close to him.
Well, no, I don't even know if he knows that or if he's suspicious of that. He just doesn't
He just doesn't trust the government.
He doesn't trust anybody.
He didn't trust anybody, but he didn't trust the government.
Yeah,
especially.
He doesn't want his picture taken. He doesn't want to be interviewed.
He doesn't think his picture's ever been taken, and apparently he had a picture taken of him when he was a child.
Yeah, other than that.
And it kind of gives us a little bit of an insight on his past that he had gotten in an accident. You know, and before the accident, he was, you know, he read, like I said earlier, he read a lot. You know, he was a quiet boy, and then he got in an accident. It was like a bike accident or something, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it kind of changed him from there.
Very interesting how, playing on the idea that past traumas can have a long-lasting effect and implicate your future.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting because at one point during the film, he kind of states his philosophy about life in general, how there is no he doesn't care about the past, he doesn't care about the future. All he cares about is now.
Yeah.
Is the present, which is kind of interesting philosophy to adhere to.
He wants to forget about things that have happened to him, and he also doesn't want to think about the things that his actions have on the future. He just at this point is just trying to live in the moment and doesn't care how his actions affect other people. He's very much become what you would call a sociopath.
Yes, yes, he is. Egotistical sociopath. So they go out, and he's going to go to the bank, and he goes to the bank, and man,
he very much wants to play with.
He's playing with everybody.
Yeah,
in there, because he's just like he's doing the typical like kind of cool uncle thing, where he's like telling like jokes and stuff about like stuff you probably shouldn't joke about, like people's jobs and in the workplace.
Well, you say something like it's like you know, don't get caught embezzling.
Yeah, basically, he's like, you know, like you take a little off the top for yourself, and like all this kind of like.
Oh, it's easy to hide $6 here and $6, you know.
Yeah, all the books balance out in the end anyway. They'll never notice, and he's saying it out loud.
The thing is I think he's having fun, but I think he also very much means what he's doing.
You could probably tell he hates. Like
he hates
any
establishment.
Type of structure.
Yeah.
Any type of structure. And so he's ribbing on the uncle out loud in the middle of the bank, and young Charlie is like, Uncle Charlie, you're saying that out loud. You probably shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah.
And the father's like, he's like not saying anything, but he's like, you know, inside he's probably dying. You know, and he's like, okay, you're going to meet the head of our bank now. Don't say any of those jokes because he's not a joking man. And he's walking around just flaunting the cash. He's walking around with $40,000 in cash, which even by today's standards is a decent amount of money.
Still a good amount of money. That's a lot of money then.
Back in the early 40s, apparently it's the equivalent to like $500,000. So he's just like flaunting it. So he's still playing with the he's playing with the head of the bank.
If you think about it,
and just bringing out the money. He's counting it in his hands.
If you think about it, he's kind of like the Joker. In the sense of like he loves the anarchy, and he just has no use for establishment and money and having anything like that. He just keeps going day by day, just trying to figure out a way to mess up stuff, you know.
Well, he wants just stirring up chaos for the sake of stirring up chaos.
Yeah, even to his own family.
Oh, even in his own family. So he deposits the money. And, you know, without...
Then these two women show up.
No, the two women show up because one of them wanted like $5 to go to the store or whatnot. And I think they were part of one of the local women's like groups along with Emma Newton, and whatnot. So the young Charlie's introducing her uncle to them and whatnot. But on his way out...
The one woman's a widow... And she makes a joke about how, which I thought was in bad taste. I was like, she jokes about, being a widow, I don't have to ask for money. Like, I have it because my husband's dead. I'm like, what? Wow. That's basically what she said. She was just like, I don't have to ask for money. I got money from my husband's death.
Well, it's I mean, just from a modern context perspective, that's kind of how things were run for a very long time, and perhaps still run today, where the husbands of the family, who were the main breadwinners, they were the main working income, getting the income in. They were the ones who ran all the money. They were the ones who dealt with all the money, or had all the money. There's probably so many things you could go into in terms of like whose names are on the bank accounts and all that kind of stuff. It was typically probably the man, the husband in the family. I mean, in many cases it was the opposite, but I mean, it just shows the sense of, misogynistic society that exists back then and can still exist today. But as you were saying, it was brought up in a light manner. But now that you bring up that she is a widow, we get a revelation soon in the movie that kind of plays into that a little bit more.
Because the killer that the cops are looking for kills widows.
Yes. That was the big reveal.
What was the name of the killer?
The Merry Widow Murderer.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess it looks good in the headline.
I guess.
But as he's leaving the bank, he tells the father character, he's like, you'll be running this place in a few years.
You should watch him. You'll be just keep an eye on him. You might be running this place in a few years.
Keep an eye on that boy. Yeah. Liar. Yeah. And then he walks out, and they're walking back Charlie and Uncle Charlie are walking back to the house, and what is interesting, Hitchcock tips us off right away. The two people who were there to do the survey, I mean, one guy says to the other one, "There he is." So we assume they're there looking for him.
They're cops, yes.
Yeah, they're detectives. So they're like, okay, so we're gonna start walking up to the door, and he's gonna see us to know that we're here. They're also playing with them a little bit as well. So because the thing is they don't know if he is the person.
No, he is one of their suspects, and they need to get a photo, particularly so that they can help ID him based off of people that might have seen him back in where the crimes happened.
Yeah, well, apparently there's a witness who knows what the person looks like. Yeah, and there's another person back east that they're looking for as well, who may or may not be the one they're looking for. Yeah, their suspect, the murderer. So, but he starts freaking out to Charlie, saying, can't believe your mother went for this. Can't believe they tricked her into doing this. And he's like, I'm not going to be involved at all. And she's like, don't worry, I promise you won't be involved at all. I'll make sure of that. Yeah. So they go inside, and the two guys are interviewing the mother, Emma. And she's like, oh, what are you doing here? My husband's not even home yet. I'm not even ready for you guys yet, and all that kind of stuff. And they kind of work their way in, and they're interviewing her and like asking all kind of like generic questions. But she starts going off about kind of nonsensical things like, oh, this is how you bake a cake. First you got to do this.
Well, yeah, she wanted things to be perfect, and they came too early, so she was like, I can't show you, how the baking in the kitchen. You have to. I'm not ready to do the eggs yet.
Yeah, I gotta do certain stuff with the butter and all this kind of stuff. And then
they're like, we're gonna go upstairs. Little Charlie's gonna show us around upstairs.
Well, and of course, little Charlie, who was defending her uncle right away, because they say, there's 5 people.
Yeah, they're trying to get the tally down of people.
Tally down. Yeah, there's 5 people, and she's like, "Oh no, there's 4," and he's like, "Oh," and my uncle's just visiting, so that's how she tries to play it off, and she's obstinate. She goes right at him. She's like, "Hey, if you're not gonna, he doesn't want to be a part of it, and if you don't accept that, you guys can go find another family." Like she's a strong-willed character, and I mean her world's about to be kind of shaken a little bit soon, but she's still at that point where she's defending her uncle staunchly. Yes. And so they were like, okay, can we go up and photograph your room? What does a typical American girl's bedroom look like? And she's like, oh no, my uncle's staying in there. And then one of the detectives is like, oh, is there a back door to here? And she's like, yes, there is. It's right down the hall. And he says, I bet you he's not in that room. I bet you he's not in that room. And of course,
they're just trying to get her to go in the room.
Oh yeah, they're trying to trick her to go into it. But I mean, like what we learned is that he bounced. He definitely
slipped out. Yeah.
he slipped out. He slipped out, and then the guy posing as the photographer goes into her room, I guess to take pictures. Probably not. I mean, I don't think he cares. But what is interesting, her uncle comes back in while they're talking, and the photographer is like, "Oh, time to get one in the hallway," and goes click. and
he takes a picture of Charlie. And
he does,
and automatically Charlie's like, I never had my picture.
I need that film.
You're gonna have to give me the film. Yeah,
gotta get it. And I mean, he says it nicely. I mean, granted, he's like,
He said it nicely in that cold serial killer way. Yeah. I'm gonna have to take that from you right now.
Yeah, very Patrick Bateman-esque, I guess. Yeah, with a smile on his face. And he hands him the film, or what we presume to be is the film.
Yeah, we find out later that he switched it. Yeah.
Yeah, he switched it very, very slyly. So they walk out. So they're like, okay, we gotta go. And then Uncle Charlie says, I think my sister said something about like the eggs are ready or something like that. And he's like, okay. And then so they go downstairs and like, oh yeah, we have to leave. We ran out of film. Something. And so they leave. But the younger detective asks Emma if he can take young Charlie out later on this evening. And she's like, "What?" She's like, well, "Why? You want to take Anne out? Anne knows where everything is in the town and all that kind of stuff." And he's like, "No, Charlie." And Charlie, and so they go out, and we don't get like a kind of confession conversation or anything like that. All we really get is kind of the aftermath. Did you find that odd, Steven?
Yeah, it was a little bit of an awkward transition.
Like they skipped a scene, like they cut it out for some reason. I don't know if they cut it out for time or cut it out for plot, or maybe it was just never shot at all. But what we get is there's just the reaction, and it's
they must have not been able, or they maybe like script-wise they couldn't figure out a good way to get to that point. Maybe, I don't know. It's possible they had a hard time getting to that point in the script. They were like, how are we going to get him to confess himself? And it seemed natural. I don't know.
Yeah, so what we get is her kind of like shocked, like, you're lying. What you're saying isn't true. And he's like, yeah, the person we're looking for is a bad guy. And we think your uncle is this bad guy. But there's a guy back east who also may be this bad guy, but we're trying to get like we just said, we're trying to get the picture to identify him and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, "Oh, you want to take me out just to manipulate me and all that kind of stuff, and just for this, not because you wanted to." But then he's like, "No, I kind of wanted to take you out as well." Now, Steven, we don't know how old Charlie is, but this gentleman here is not exactly young.
No. And to be honest,
granted, different times.
It
movies,
is.
Hollywood,
well, I mean,
blah, blah, blah.
It still happens today, but like,
age is just a number. But I mean,
honestly, even just taking out the age problem, I never believe any kind of like romanticness between these two at all.
That was probably one of the weaker part of the movies.
Yeah.
They don't really have any romantic chemistry.
Well, you barely have scenes with them doing anything together.
Yeah, other than like this confession scene and like them
in a garage.
And then
but he's already confessing his love in that scene, so it's like,
yeah, he does. And I'm like, didn't you know this girl for like 2 days?
Jeez.
I mean, there is the idea, instant love at first sight, all that kind of stuff.
It's something that's played up in most older films.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't Before Sunset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before Sunset.
We don't take 2 films to confess our love. Basically.
Well, I mean, I meant like this idea of Linklaters Before Sunset. That connection was there.
No, yeah, but like, they don't say "I love you" to each other in the first movie.
They don't even have to. That's how strong the connection and the love is between the two characters.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I'm comparing 2 different movies. I'm just using it as a reference to like connection with love in film and whatnot. But no, that's kind of one of the weaker part of the movies. But this is but then she returns home, and now, like I said, that seed of doubt that has center on her track is now growing. You know what I mean? The seed of doubt that's been planted is now growing and growing. And she's kind of bewildered by it, you know what I mean? And I believe this is when we get and she's kind of shocked by it. I mean, this is probably someone who doesn't really have a concept of what, murder is or what heinous acts someone can commit. You know what I mean? So this is kind of shocking to her. And I believe this is when we get the second dinner scene. Steven, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Where they're walking home, the father and the other guy.
I think, but also the dinner scene where you get
the confession about how he hates widows.
Yeah, and how he hates it is a chilling monologue delivered by Joseph Cotton.
I hate
chilling, where he compares widows to just
garbage.
He calls them animals. He's like just festering swine,
fat wheezing animals
who are just living in their wealth and just hoarding it all, and they're just the worst people ever. And it's during this scene where where us as viewers, we know this guy's the killer.
Yeah.
This guy's a murderer.
Well, yeah.
Come on now. I mean, and now Charlie must be really, really, significantly convinced at this point. But she's not fully convinced quite yet. But this is the scene where, it's at the end of that monologue, you see Charlie. I think it's Charlie's voice off camera that says but they're still human or whatever. And then Joseph Cotton he turns his head. The camera doesn't move. Turns his head, looks directly at the camera, and goes, "Are they?" And I'm like, for a split second, I'm like, "Damn, that is chilling to the bone." and this is when Hume Cronin comes in, and he's like, I would. The father's like, how I would kill someone? I would, he does the mushroom. He's like, accidental murder. It would be manslaughter at best. And the father's like, how I would do it? Drown you in a tub. And the daughter starts freaking out. Can we stop talking
little
about
Charlie
murder?
jumps up and is pissed off. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, can we stop talking about murder? And I believe this is the night where she goes to the library to see the back issue of the newspaper, which people forget that the libraries used to do that. They used to have the back issues of all the newspapers that came
That was
out.
the internet back then.
That was the internet back then.
So she runs in there, and she, the librarian's already closed, but she lets her in, and she finds it and finds the article about the murders.
Yeah, and this is when she gets find out the Merry Widow murderer, and we get and we get this just point of view shot of her reading the article, and it's just taking up the whole frame, and and the camera just panning down about all the information. It's just this most dramatic score you'll ever hear, and it's just her, and it's just that revelation that her uncle is probably this murderer.
Yep. So from there, we move into what's next.
Oh yeah, this is when I think this is when we get the part where we've already gotten the revelation that the picture that the picture that they took is her. No, we haven't gotten that yet. I think this is when aren't they at church the next day, and this is when the other detective tells Charlie that they actually have the pictures.
Yes, she's walking with her, the one other detective that's not the creepy one hitting on her.
The older one.
Yeah, that is saying that they got the shots, and that tells her about the switch that they made, and that they're going to identify soon who the person is, who the right person is. So
yeah, and then she's like they don't want, but we find out through the conversations between both detectives that they don't want to arrest him in town. They want him out of the town because they want him. They kind of don't want to make it a big scene. I guess
they're trying to be discreet about it.
And And what they do is they decide, and so they try to convince Charlie to somehow get him out of town.
Yeah.
And what is interesting is that she's kind of like, I think she's still torn about what to do, because she doesn't want because she knows the trauma that it will have on her mother.
She doesn't want to embarrass the family either. You know, she though she has her, you know, thoughts about it, and she thinks that he could be this person, she doesn't want it to affect her family. So she's keeping that shame to herself for her family's sake.
But she decides she's going to try to get him out of town anyway, but not going to say anything. But what ends up happening is that the other suspect he's not caught, but he dies being pursued by the cops.
Yeah.
This is when
he gets hit by, what was it, an airplane?
Yeah.
Propeller?
The propeller. Yeah, by air.
You hear it by the father and that guy talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, they love that stuff.
Yeah, they're like, oh, that's hilarious. You know, like it's some crazy. You know, like you said, desensitized. They don't really. They're so naive. They don't realize how horrific that is because they've never experienced it.
But now she thinks that she's kind of off the hook in terms of her participation in this.
Well, I mean, no. I mean, she as soon as that, you know, that knowledge comes to, she sees Charlie and he's just like, well, I'm gonna get something to eat. You could tell his mood changed from, you know, they think that the suspect was him and they went after him and he died in their pursuit of him. So they think that they got their guy and that he's dead.
Well, I meant like younger Charlie is she younger Charlie, she's still her reaction is interesting because there's this scene where Uncle Charlie's walking up the stairs and like you said, he's in that good mood, and then he turns and looks down and Charlie's in the doorway, and I think at that point he knows that she knows.
Oh, yeah.
It's very ominous.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not letting you off the hook. I know that you've done. It's you. You're the one. Because he found out that she went to the library. You know, so he knows that she's investigated.
Oh yeah, because when she was going to that library, she
got stopped by the cop in the street.
You know what scene we skipped over? Holy crap! That's where we were. After when she freaked out at that dinner, she left.
Yeah,
right?
That's when she left.
Yeah,
and
she left and she ran away.
He stopped. He went after her. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the scene we just skipped over.
Yeah, that's what messed us up. Yeah.
They go into that bar. That bar.
Yeah.
Whatever, where her friend from school was working. Kind of random, and she's like, "Oh, I've never been in a place like this before." And they sit there and they have. It's not quite the scene from Heat between Pacino and De Niro, but it's in a diner kind of, and they're and this is what and she pretty much knows, and he kind of he confesses to her. That's what he does, confess to her. We skipped all this. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah,
it's not I didn't just watch this movie twice in 3 days.
Yeah. Sometimes things can get jumbled if you're not.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. This is what happens here on the Cinema Discovery Project.
We're trying to go off of memory when we probably could take a little bit of notes.
Probably could, but that scene I think is vital because it is pretty much a confession. Then he like literally like takes some like piece of rope or napkin or whatever,
and he like pulls it like he'd strangle somebody with it.
Strangling it. And she's looking at it like, yeah, I wonder what those hands have strangled before.
Yeah.
But this is where he kind of, his nihilism about life kind of just comes out, where he just says people are terrible. People are swine. They're awful. You pull back these houses and all you see is just, terrible, worthless people. Yeah. And it just shows how much contempt he has for humanity. He hates people to a crazy extent, and it's wild it's just kind of wild how he came to that point, which we don't really get a lot of context as to how he became, what he is. But in a way that kind of builds up the mystery, where it could be anyone. It could be anyone in a society like that.
It's how, like we talked about, with other, how that probably influenced a lot of other filmmakers like John Carpenter, and where you don't need to know everything about the killer for him to be scary. he put masks over his guy's head, but in this case, we don't need to know his history. That's why I think movies like the first Rob Zombie Halloween make that character less interesting, because we don't need to know what he had for breakfast. We don't need to know, we don't need to see his, beginning in detail. It's nice to have plot, hearsay. It's nice to hear somebody talk about it, but we don't need to see it. It didn't need to be visualized. So, I mean, we can, like you said earlier, it can be put in our heads. What did he do before this? We've never even seen him murder anybody, though he's supposed to be this murderer. So we've never even literally seen him kill anybody yet. So it's all imagination.
Yeah, this is how, and then the next scene is and the next scene is when they go to the church and all that stuff, and then we find out about the other suspect, and then we get a scene where apparently her uncle is going to be like honored at some dinner or some talk or something in the community, and they're all getting fancied up. They're all getting gussied up to go out to honor him. Essentially, apparently he's ingratiated himself within the community to a great extent, and what it means is they have to take separate cars. But young Charlie is supposed to ride with Uncle Charlie, and she goes and she's going to go out to get the car. And she goes into the garage, and the car is already running. Yeah. And, of course, that's leading to a lot of gasoline, smoke, and exhaust fumes, and basically the stuff that'll kill you. And she tries to get out. She can't get out. The door's been jammed, which is another scene we kind of skipped over, too.
We mentioned it kind of where the detective has this weird scene in a garage with her.
Well, you know what it is? It's the one, it's right after they find out that the other suspect is killed, and Uncle Charlie's looking out the window, and the detective shows up, and they go and they talk in the garage, and they try to get out, and the door's jammed. Yeah, and Uncle Charlie just happens to be standing out there, and he's like, "Oh, went back in my day, we didn't go into garage when we wanted alone time or something like that, something dumb." Something where it's like, dude, you're tipping your hand that you basically jammed that door because you're standing there. So we skipped over that, but it's foreshadowing.
Yeah, she goes in, car's running, it's already very fumey in there, and then the door closes, and it could have fell closed, but no, he was there. He lodged a stick under it, and so he's trying to kill her.
Yeah, and inside the house where they're all getting ready to go out, he puts
he turns the radio on.
Yeah,
turns it up loud.
Turns it up loud, and the kid's like, "Oh, I love it loud," and it's like, "Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
who cares?"
Yeah, there you go, and then the Hume Cronin character comes in and says, "Hey, there's somebody stuck in the garage."
So why didn't you just try to save them? And why did you have to come in and announce it?
He went for help instead?
Yeah, stupid.
Stupid. So they all run over, and they're trying to get this door open, and then Uncle Charlie kicks the stick aside, and then takes charge, so it doesn't look like somebody tried to kill her. Right. But what happened actually before this scene was little Charlie was... the younger Charlie was trying to go out, and she went down the back steps, and one of the steps broke off, and it's like we know that was Uncle Charlie trying to kill her.
Yeah,
he's trying to kill her by sabotaging so that she'll fall and break her neck or something, or fall and die. I mean, wouldn't that be a dark part of the movie? What if she fell down the steps, broke her, she got paralyzed, and now she's in the hospital, and he comes in, and he's like, "Yes, Charlie." That would have been dark. That would have been very, very dark. But this scene, suffocation in a garage, it's kind of a dark way to go out either. But what is interesting though is apparently back then you could turn the car on and take the key out of the ignition. Yeah, glad they kind of got rid of that. Yeah, that's not safe. I'm glad they threw that. They threw that mechanism away. Yeah. So he puts the key back in when he turns the car off, and she's like, "Oh, I couldn't find the key," and it's like, "Oh, it was in there when I went in there." Yeah. So she's like, don't. When she comes to, she's like, "Get away from me." Oh yeah. Not only that, but she's also like, he still tells him to go to the dinner, go to the talk, don't cancel things because of me and whatnot. So she stays and they go. But when she stays, she's trying to call up the detective, trying to get a hold of him because, she's in danger, obviously.
She knows that it's time to bring in the cops.
Yeah, she knows it's time, but she can't get a hold of him. She's calling up all the places that she was told that he may be, and she can't get a hold of him. So she goes up to his room and
grabs the ring.
Because earlier in that bar scene, she basically takes the ring off and doesn't want it anymore because she knows where it's from. It's from the woman that he murdered, obviously.
Yeah.
And of course he takes it and hides it, and he's like, and then he taunts her afterward too. He's like, where's the, you don't have any proof. Where's that ring? I don't have it. You don't have it. It's just gone. But she finds it in his room.
Yeah, she knows. She realizes he took it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she puts it on. So when they all come back and they're all having this after party, if you will, get together.
She taunts him back.
Yeah, she taunts him back by walking down the stair slowly with the ring on her hand on the banister, and he sees it, and he's a little freaked out by it. So he announces to everybody, "You know what? I'm leaving tomorrow.
I'm leaving.
I'm out of here. I gotta get out of here." So he's like, "Oh, it's time for me to hit that old dusty trail. Gotta go.
And then there was a moment where they're outside talking, and she's just like, "I'll kill you myself if you don't leave my family alone."
Oh yeah, she's
like to the point. Yeah,
she's turned into something that she wasn't early on in this movie. That naivete, that obsession with her uncle, that was like you were saying, borderline creepy, whatever, is now turned to pure hatred.
Now, if I could use a comparison to another movie, she's gone from Sarah Connor at the beginning of Terminator to more like Sarah Connor near the end of Terminator.
Yeah,
Maybe beginnings of Terminator 2. I don't know, but that's close as I can think of off the top of my head.
Oh yeah, she's
getting a little bit more badass. She's a little bit more in control now.
Her eyes have been opened. She's more aware of who her uncle is, how the world is, and she has to be on guard now. So the next day, what is interesting is that dinner scene where she announces that her mother becomes very emotional because she's like, we were so close when we were younger, but I got married and moved away, and
she's
didn't
weird.
get to see you.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, weird. But what I think Hitchcock is, I don't know, saying about that, just kind of like the distancing between people, can affect people's relationships.
Sure.
And sometimes you think you know someone, but you've been away from them for so long that they're no longer the person that you thought they were, when you were younger or whatnot. And that happens. And that can go one way. Things can go good, and people can become better people, or things can go south and people become awful people. I mean, life is just kind of up and down in that way. And so the next day they go on the train. Apparently the kids accompany the uncle on the train. I don't know. It sounds kind of sounds like a safety problem to me, but basically they all come off, and Uncle Charlie basically traps Charlie there because she knows too much. She's a loose end, Stephen. She's a loose end, and she's got to go. So he's going to throw her off the train, and they have a struggle, and the door's open, and he's holding her over, pretty much about to throw her out. And he's like, "No, wait for it to get a little faster so that basically she'll die. She'll die."
He's trying to make sure that throwing off her train will actually kill her.
Yeah, he wants to make sure no loose ends, essentially. Yeah. And what ends up happening, she ends up kind of knocking him off the train, and he dies.
It's a little ridiculous, but okay.
Yeah, he gets knocked off, and then another train is coming from the other track, towards the opposite way, and I guess assuming runs him over, and then the end credits hit. No, the end credits
there's
don't
one
hit.
scene where she's with the detective.
We get a funeral scene.
Yeah.
We get a not a post credits, but we get a funeral scene where the whole town shows up. The whole town, seemingly. They give him a multiple car caravan and all that kind of stuff, and
it reminds me of the end of The Dark Knight, or Dark Knight Rises, or at the beginning of Dark Knight Rises, when they're celebrating somebody that actually did something very awful, but they're keeping the image together for the good of the...
Yeah, Harvey Dent.
Yeah.
You know, Gotham's White Knight.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, that's very true. And there's even like an overlay of narration of like, assuming a priest or somebody saying like, oh, he was Santa Rosa's child, or, you know, he was one of our own, and all this kind of stuff. And meanwhile, it's like us as viewers were like, this guy was a murdering scumbag. He killed several people, stole their money, and tried to kill his niece. I mean, this guy's a scumbag. And she has one final talk with the detective character, and she confessed that she held back information, and they basically resolved to keep Uncle Charlie's crimes a secret. They kind of his deeds kind of die with him.
Yeah, she wants to, as we said, you know, she wants to keep the integrity of her family, so they just decides to help cover it up.
Yep, that's what happens, and that's kind of a bitter,
a cynical ending, a very cynical ending. Yeah,
very cynical. It's not a happy ending.
No, not particularly.
I mean, this poor girl, her life just completely
her
shattered.
Innocence has been shattered, and
like she's gonna have to carry this burden in her life for.
Now she's gonna have to go back to her bed and start thinking about things again.
Yeah, talk about existential crises.
Yeah,
I mean that's gonna continue on for her.
Yeah, she's gonna have to have. Hopefully, her other uncle's nice on her father's side.
I guess. I hope.
That'll be the sequel.
Yeah, I know. A modern day remake.
Now, looking into this, you know, there's been some movies that kind of have been remakes, and also inspired of the movie Stalker, that was made by I think it was Korean director.
Park Chan-wook?
Yeah,
Stoker.
I think so. Yeah, Stoker is kind of inspired by this movie.
Very similar. But obviously, modern day, you can take things to more.
Yeah, they go in different directions.
Creepy level.
But it's a pretty good movie. I like that movie.
Yeah, it's kind of an origin of evil movie. Very, very interesting movie, starring
Matthew Good.
Matthew Good is in it. Mia Wasikowska,
Nicole Kidman. Yeah.
Written, I believe the screenplay was written by Wentworth Miller, who many know probably as the lead actor from the show Prison Break.
Yeah.
But apparently he took a lot of influence from Shadow of a Doubt for this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that came out 2013.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Shadow of a Doubt, Alfred Hitchcock, 1943.
It's a definite. I would say it's, you know, above his average stuff. I think it's not top tier, but it's like at least it's in the top. I would say in his top 15.
Oh
movies.
Yeah, I would say
top
so
10, maybe even top 10.
Yeah, I think it's quintessential Hitchcock for a lot of reasons. You know, this idea of him playing with us as audience viewers, this idea of him injecting evil into a situation where evil is not typically known to be, you know, small town America at the time.
Yeah.
You know, like evil comes to town, something like that. It's playing with, you know, certain taboo stuff when it comes to the, you know, weird uncle-niece relationship. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not. I mean, I couldn't say, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility since Hitchcock is always pushing the boundaries in many aspects of his films. Yeah,
this movie very much plays on that. Kind of a movie talking about abuse. You know, it's a movie about even you could say sexual abuse, though there was no actual sexual nature in the movie necessarily. But you know, when you're talking about it, you know, somebody that is admiring of somebody else, and then they betray their trust, and then they try to keep them quiet, is something that is a relationship that happens between abusers.
Not only that, but I think this idea of you know, you shouldn't the downfall of idealizing people, like making people idols. You know what I mean? Like you know how they say don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Something like that, I think plays into this movie.
And you know, like we've been saying, you know, there's always a dark side to everything. Not everything's pure light.
Well, you know, life's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place.
Jesus. That's from another movie, isn't
it? It's from Rocky Balboa.
Yes. The sixth one.
Yes, it is the sixth one.
But I think that will conclude this spotlight.
Yes, it will.
On the Cinema Discovery Project. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me on Instagram, Cinema Discovery Project. You can also find me on Letterboxd, where I post my ratings of all the stuff I'm watching. And sometimes I'll do a list. Sometimes I'll do, I always kind of, right now I've been just watching as many new movies as I can, posting what I'm watching in there, and I'm up to like 60 movies, so I'm doing pretty good so far.
Nice.
That will be it, and thank you for listening. Go to Podbean or Apple Podcasts to get this download, and we will see you in the next episode. And hey, keep on watching the movies.
I know I will.